Before I start, I just want to make clear that I'm up here, just the views I'm going to share are just mine alone. I'm not up here representing the district or speaking on behalf of the entire board. Just one guy's random thoughts on technology and education. And so anything I say, please don't assume that it is official district policy unless I explicitly say so. Ready to go here? So I'm about to turn 50, which now that I'm almost there, doesn't seem that old. I mean, right? It's the new 30. So, but when you think about how much technology has changed our world just in the few short years since I was a student. I mean, TV had just made the transition from black and white to color. There was no cable or satellite. We had rabbit ears. Cameras had film. You had to take in to be developed and wait for your pictures to come back. We went to the record store, bought our music on vinyl records. If you wanted to make a mixtape, your choices were cassette or 8-track. We went with 8-track. It's supposed to be better sound quality. But at least I didn't buy a Betamax for my first VCR. But since the time I was a student and when my kids started school, VCRs have kind of come and gone. CDs, pretty much same thing, and DVDs aren't far behind. Computers used to fill up an entire room. I didn't use one until college, and the first time I had one at home or to use at work was a few years after college, and I was working for IBM. Phones had cords, and you had to actually dial them, and the first inkling I ever had of a cell phone was the shoe phone from Get Smart. such an impact on me. I remember thinking, oh, I want one of those, and so I was like a really early adopter of cell phones. I think I got my first one in 1989, and it was about as big as a shoe. If you wanted news instantly, you had to get it on the radio or wait for the 6 o'clock news or the morning paper. And there's some news you don't want to wait till the next day to get. If your parents wanted to really give you a leg up, they'd get you a set of the Encyclopedia Britannicas, all the world's knowledge printed in printed form. And if you were lucky, your typewriter had a correcting tape. At school, we come with backpacks. Oh gosh, listen to your leg. We come with backpacks that were loaded up with, textbooks that were, they're probably out of date before they even got printed. We have our pencil, we have our pouch here with, pencils, compass, protractor, more pencils, all the colors you need. We have spiral notebooks. 3-ring binder with worksheets we fill out in pencil, printed off photocopied reading materials, more worksheets, and more worksheets to fill out in pencil. Probably why we needed so many pencils. But the odd thing is, although this could have been my backpack from junior high, it's actually my son's from last year. I don't know why he was carrying so much stuff around. You'd think there would be a more efficient way to store written information in a compact form. But we'll get to that. Because the bizarre thing is that as much as our world has changed massively from technology, schools don't really operate that much differently than they did when I went to school, or 50 years before that, or 100 years before that when public schools first came into existence. It's like this bizarre parallel universe where the computer was never invented. In today's classroom, sure, the teacher probably has a computer on his or her desk. There might be a smart board, probably a couple of classroom computers in the back of the room, maybe a laptop card available. But for the students, it's really a technology-free zone. And I've read that 85% of today's high school students have cell phones. I think here it's probably even higher than that. But most schools, they're not allowed. You can't use them at school. So you basically got an Encyclopedia Britannica times 1,000,000 in your pocket. But if you pull it out in class, you get in trouble. And and my kids have, probably a lot of yours, have laptop computers, and they use it all the time at home. But I don't think one of them has ever once brought his computer to school. So you got the greatest tool ever created for creating and accessing and distributing information. But why would you ever bring it to school? But don't show up without a pencil, because you can't function at school without a pencil. And it's like, in 2013, isn't that just completely backwards? Because today's high schoolers, they've never known a world without laptops and cell phones and texting and internet. Middle schoolers have never known a world without smartphones and YouTube and social media. And even the kids starting kindergarten next Tuesday, they've never known a world without the iPad and high-speed mobile internet available everywhere all the time. But so I think in a couple of years, kids are going to show up at school, you hand them one of these, and they're going to go, "Hey, teacher, this iPad, it's busted. It only runs one app, and it's lame, and the guts are all hanging out." And you take them to the library, and they'll think it's the warehouse for all the broken iPads. And it's this generation is what Don Tapscott labeled the net generation. It's a futurist named Mark Prensky who calls them digital natives. I mean, they didn't immigrate to this new world of ubiquitous technology like most of us, and including me. They were born here, and they're going to live here along with us for the rest of their lives. So when they need a piece of information, they're not going to reach for a reference book or or try to reach back into their memory and see if or in their mind to see if they can remember it. They're going to reach for their pocket, grab their iPhone, and Google it, right? And why not? I mean, Einstein said that he never memorizes anything that he could easily, or never did memorize anything that he could easily look up. Well, today, that's everything. And so, that really has a huge impact on what we need to be teaching kids in school. Mark Prensky relates this from a principal in Australia. The teacher's no longer the fountain of knowledge. The internet is. And that's okay. But it just means, it means we need to make a shift from acquiring, students acquiring knowledge just in case to acquiring just in time, because that's what they're comfortable doing. And it just means that our schools need to adapt to that new reality. So, but adopting new technology in education, rather slowly is not a new phenomenon. That's been going on for a while, and it reminds me of the raging debate we had back in the 70s about calculators. That if we let kids use calculators, they'll never learn how to do long division by hand. But fortunately, we eventually kind of accepted that calculators are here to stay, that using them isn't cheating, and and that doing long division by hand really isn't an essential skill anymore. But we still have a ways to go. I mean, some people will say you can't let kids use computers in class. They'll just look up all the answers. I'm like, yeah, that's the point, and that's what they do. That's what they're going to do their entire life. So let's stop giving tests where we ask kids to regurgitate readily available facts. It just doesn't make sense anymore. I think that there's it's a lot of things that that we do in school. It's like, why? Why are we still having kids memorize the state capitals, or learn cursive handwriting, or use, or plot data onto graphs with pen and paper? And we don't make people, learn to ride a horse before they can take driver's ed. I mean, these just aren't essential schools anymore in this new essential skills anymore in this new world. So, but what is essential? Oh yeah. The other point is, think that, I mean, right now these kids have these devices in their pocket, but pretty soon, they're going to be in our classes, and I don't think it'll be too long before they're implanted in our heads. And so, what are we going to do? Pry the cell chips out of kids' heads when they come to school? I mean, we just have to stop thinking let's wall this technology off and keep kids from using it in our schools. So what are the essential skills for the future? It's the ability to find and access and synthesize information, to think critically and creatively, to solve complex problems, to work collaboratively in teams, to be able to communicate clearly. And these are the things that are emphasized in the new Common Core State Standards that go into effect next year in Washington and 44 other states. They're in the Next Generation Science Standards, which come along a little after that. And they're key elements of the 2020 vision that we use in Mercer Island. That is official district policy. And these are all skills that technology helps us to do. So I think the great news though is that there's a big change on the horizon. In Los Angeles, they have a $550 million technology upgrade underway with the goal of providing a device to every student. A lot of districts have shifted course and said, you know what, kids? Bring your devices. Bring your own devices to school. Help them get the one-to-one. And that's great. That was the path we were on here at Mercer Island until recently. But I think there's a huge difference between being almost one-to-one and every kid actually having a device dedicated to them all the time. And, you know, and ideally the same device or one that's compatible so they can run the same stuff. Because I think for teachers, you want to be able to remove the limitation of saying, well, I'd really like to do X, but you know, what about the kid that doesn't have the device? Or I don't know if everybody can run that app. So, so that's why I'm so happy that after 2 years of pilots and testing and a lot of staff training and build out of infrastructure, we're rolling out iPads to all 8th through 12th graders this year. You know, dedicated devices. We're also getting Office 365 accounts for document creation and email, SkyDrive, so they can store their work in the cloud, facilitate sharing and collaboration. And you know, it's my hope, not official district policy yet, that we'll extend this down to 7th graders and 6th graders next year, and I hope all the way down to, you know, to kindergartners as soon as possible. And at some point we'll pass the state of Maine, who's been providing iPads to every kindergartner for the last few years and is gradually working their way up. So, and by the way, one district in Maine, the Auburn School District, did something kind of interesting. They randomly selected half of their kindergarten classes and gave them iPads right at the beginning of the year. The other half got them 12 weeks later. And then they compared the results. And the group that got real iPads versus the ones with the broken iPads outperformed this group on every single district literacy assessment, all 12 of their district literacy assessments. You know, and that's really not that surprising when you think, I'm going to come back here and shift to this. It's really not that surprising when you think of, you know, how much more engaging and interactive these devices are. How much more engaging and interactive these devices are. So this is an example of a new textbook that's been created for the iPad. It's you know, it's a biology textbook, and it has features like you can click on a word and get the definition of it. You can imagine in a foreign language text, maybe this has translation or a you know, hopefully an audio pronunciation of it. It's also got interactive elements here, so you can manipulate the items and get different information on the items. Click on different places, you get different things, that sort of thing.
That's cool.
It's also got multimedia features built right in. There's a little movie clip.
There's the question of why did I again?
You can cut that off quickly and make some people out. It's got much richer media within the text. You know, not just one picture, but you know, a selection of pictures. If you know, students want to highlight it, you know, it's simple to just highlight the text. If you want to add your own annotations, you can just do that right in line with the text and create your own flashcards. It's also got built-in assessment. It's got assessment built right in. Here's an end of chapter review that's interactive. So, which of the following is a savannah? I'm going to go with that one, and hey, all right, got it right. So you get instant feedback right in line with the textbook. So I think that's you know, an example of why this or how this kind of technology can be much more engaging for kids. And I think it has the potential also to not only lighten the load on kids' shoulders, you know, to go from all of that to just this, hopefully, you know, before too long, but also on taxpayers. The Mooresville School District in North Carolina, a little bit bigger than ours, but they have about the same annual budget, about $48 million a year, which means that they have less student funding per year than we do. And they're about very near the bottom of school districts in North Carolina, but they're providing laptops to all 3rd through 12th graders. And how? Partly because they've stopped spending so much money on textbooks and things like globes and maps and calculators and certainly a lot of paper. And the results have been pretty stunning. In 4 years, their graduation rate has risen 14% to 91%. The percentage of kids who pass all of their core state assessments has jumped from 68% to 88% just in the 4 years since they started the program. But they'll be the first to say that it's not just just providing devices for everybody isn't enough. It takes a more bigger overhaul. So I'll just show a short clip here of the principal of the high school to explain that.
I don't think you can give kids access to the world and then lock them down. You know, I mean, the whole premise behind a one-to-one is creating access and opening the world up to kids that didn't have that sort of access. So if you put all those tools in the hands of your students and then you say, well, you can only use it from this time to this time and on these 3 sites and in this straight row in the classroom, I think it completely defeats the purpose. We talk about creating 21st century students in this, we keep talking about 21st century. At the end of the day, 21st century is about skills. It's about being able to communicate and collaborate with people and to set goals. And when you start giving kids choice, that's when they really get engaged to a different level. We knew that going into this sort of digital environment that it had to be about kids and that we had to have a real student-centered environment. And so our belief here is about relationships with kids and relationships with each other. The culture piece gets lost quite a bit. School boards and superintendents and different folks that will come in here that talk about wanting to do a one-to-one are quick to go straight into professional development and the actual tools, and all of that's important. But I don't think it's anywhere close to as important as evaluating the culture of your school. And are they ready for that sort of change? Because specifically to technology, when going one-to-one, it completely turns your world upside down.
I think that's the key point. Is this is a big change, and it really does turn the world upside down. Skip ahead of the next. And that message was really reinforced by this teacher who's in the Chicago public schools, and she got a grant for a one-to-one iPad pilot back in 2010, and found that the first month or two didn't have the sort of transformative effect that she was expecting. She said eventually she figured out the problem is she had just seen them as sort of a supplement to what she was always doing, trying to fit them into her existing structure. And she said that didn't work, and what she had to do was completely, she needed a technology-based redefinition of my practice, really turning it upside down. And you had to ask, what can she do with these devices that would be impossible to do without them? And I think our staff this year will probably go through a similar, similar thing where some teachers are going to just dive right in and completely overhaul what they're doing things and just get all kinds of just take things in a whole exciting new direction. And others, it's going to be a slower process, and we may not see that big of a change right away. But I'm hopeful that this time next year we'll have seen really major and dramatic positive changes, hopefully nearly across the board. And to me, I think the most exciting thing about technology is what it can do to make learning more personalized. I mean, personalized learning has been the essential element of our district's 2020 vision for the last several years. But to me, personalization means really changing from that one-size-fits-all model that where the whole class learns the same thing at the same time at the same pace. It's really an assembly line approach to education that we've had basically since the assembly line. It was put in place to be an efficient way to train workers for the assembly line, but that's not the way that's not the world that we live in anymore. But yet, virtually our entire education system is built around Carnegie units and seat time. The idea that Algebra 1 is this body of material, you start in September, you spend 180 hours with your butt in a seat, and by June, if you get 60% of the points, then you pass, and you move on to geometry. Regardless of how much you actually learned, or how much you forget over the summer because of course, our kids are all out working in the fields all summer. But as there's a great educational consultant named Bill Daggett, and what he likes to say is, if you're focused on seat time, focused on the wrong end of the student. And I think there's other districts that are moving to a new way of doing things. things that isn't tied to seat time. And it's, we don't take all kids of a certain age, grouping them by date of manufacture, like Sir Ken Robinson says in his amazing TED Talk, which I highly recommend. But you allow kids to progress at their own pace and move from one level to the next whenever, but only when they've mastered the material of the level that they're working on. And this is often called competency-based progression. It was started by a little school district up in Alaska that hadn't had a single kid go to college in 25 years, and now they get 95% of their students going on to post-secondary education or into the military. The Adams County School District in Colorado is a much larger district, 10,000 students. They got rid of grade levels. And now instead they define 10 different levels of math, reading, social studies, and science that students progress through at their own pace. If they finish all of them early, they move on and take AP classes. And their goal is for every student to graduate with at least 18 college credits. In New Hampshire, they got rid of Carnegie units, your basic credit system in high school, also in college. They got rid of Carnegie units in 2005 and adopted competency-based progression across the board with all their high schools in 2008 and 2009. This is something the Department of Education supports at the federal level, and 36 states have policies that allow credit-based mastery. So you kind of have to ask yourself, well, why isn't everybody doing this? And I think partly it's because all those states also have policies that say that the funding is based, funding the district is based on how many students are actually sitting in seats on a certain day. So hopefully we can fix that. And also the fact that it's just so different. A lot of people will say, well, wait a minute, you can't have a class with 5th grade kids that some of them are zooming ahead to trigonometry, and other kids are, the teachers there helping them with fractions and basic multiplication. Except like we heard on the Khan Academy video, that's exactly what's happening down in Los Altos, where they flipped the classroom and they're using the Khan Academy to move to this type of approach. So I guess I have to ask, the reason we can't do that everywhere is, thanks very much.